Well, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good middle of the night to you, wherever you may be. It's the longest day of the year. Well, it's not. They're all 24 hours, aren't they? But it's the 20th of June, which is the summer solstice and all that other stuff. This is Paul English Live. We're with you here for the next couple of hours, maybe a bit longer depending on how things go, but we're certainly here with you for the next couple of hours on WBN 324. Welcome to the show. Football, and football. Not really. And as all the pretty ladies of England gathered at Royal Ascot today and looked gorgeous in their hats, I sat around in my trousers, polishing my knees. The weatherman tell us that this time next week we're all going to be melting. It's going to be that hot. Bring it on. And usual partners in crime will be here. Paul B's with me from the off. I'm going to gab a little bit at the start here. And Patrick C. should be joining us maybe for the second hour, and maybe you'll feel like joining us at some point when you get the urge. Yeah, hi, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and all that kind of stuff. Welcome back to the show. Show number, I'm looking at the numbers here, 42. Good grief. It's nearly a year. Well, it's 10 weeks, isn't it? 10 weeks to go for a year. And been having lots of technical fun this week. Seriously fun, actually good stuff. Not necessarily here with the setup of the show, because this is flawless now, as you can probably tell. But no, certain little things. Just worth mentioning to you right at the beginning. I'll probably repeat them a couple of times throughout the show, but podcasting, you know, that lovely word. I don't really like it at all, but we've been playing around with a platform called Podhome, run by Barry the Belgian. I don't know whether he's referred to as Barry the Belgian, but he is called Barry, and he is a Belgian, and I call him Barry the Belgian, and he seems to be a nice chap. And he's built a really interesting sort of platform for hosting podcasts. And I've been rather entertained technically with it because it'll take another week, I think, before I can move the podcast situation over to it. So for the moment, everything that we have on Paul English Live stays as it is. But what's going to happen is that we are going to move over there. In fact, I'm in the process of doing it, but it's going to take a little while. I've got about 5 of the previous 40-odd shows over there. And the reason for this is that he's using that terrible thing called AI. AI, you might have heard of it. The whole of the media just bangs on about it forever, AI, and all that kind of stuff. But it is rather nifty, is this, and it's saved an awful lot of work. What it does, the clever little thing, and I'll bring Paul in to talk about it at some point, is it listens to the entire show. Then it produces a transcript of it in a matter of seconds. Very worrying, right? I don't like transcripts of shows. What's the point of doing them if people are going to read them? I can't see the point in that. But it also generates sort of notes and titles and all sorts of other things instantaneously, which is being very well, although it's taking a little bit of time to catch up with the old shows, it's going to be really good going forward from this point. So I'm quite looking forward to that. They also distribute the show out to multiple platforms and directories sort of on the fly in the background. And if you've actually ever done anything like this, you go, well, that's relatively easy. And each step is relatively easy. It's just that there's so many of them, you have to repeat them, and they're a bit sort of wearing after a while. It's a bit sort of drudgy. So getting AI to do that would be pretty good. And in fact, that's exactly what he's done. So I'll keep you posted on that. It's more of a toy for me, I guess, at the back end. It's of less interest, I suppose, at the front end in terms of what we're going to talk about, because it just is. But very good package. So tip of the hat to him. And if you're looking for a place, podhome.fm. I'm giving him a shout out because I think he's done some pretty brilliant work, actually. I mean, I don't view myself as a podcaster, but I guess I am. I guess we all are, really, because ultimately our shows go to MP3 or AAC files or whatever, and they get consumed that way. So that's good. One other thing as well that they've got, which is going to help me going forward, is the AI stuff grabs a hold of the audio and basically soups it up. I don't know to what degree, because I always thought my audio was fantastic anyway. It's not the case, actually. It's improving all the time, but it soups the whole thing up. So it removes things like, all those would come out. Not that people want them taken out. They love it when I do that. No, not really. But it takes out a lot of mouth noises and all these sorts of other things. So from a professional point of view, doing audiobook work, it may come in very, very handy. So I quite like that. Also, whilst I'm just sat here thinking about AI, there's a comment floating around. Maybe some of you have seen it, which hits the nail on the head. I mean, on one level, I don't actually really believe in it, to be quite honest. I just think it's a souped-up bit of the next step of computing. Lovely. It's not a sentient thinking thing. They want you to think it is, but it's just a very whiz-bang machine. It's the next stage in doing these things. But I've seen a comment from someone, a lady, I think, whose name I'm afraid I can't recall, which is a common thing for me. Apologies, Katie, for me forgetting your name at the weekend. And if she hears this, she'll know what I mean. Which was saying, look, I don't want AI to produce songs and write lyrics and all that stuff. I want to do that. What I want AI to do is to do my washing up. Yeah. Go shopping for me. Yes. And all that kind of stuff. And I'm going, yeah, that's what we need. I suppose we'd be talking about robots, wouldn't we? We'd need our own robot. And I guess that wouldn't go wrong, would it? If we all had our own robots on AI helping us out in the house. I mean, what could possibly go wrong there? Not much. I mean, that's just going to turn out great. Paul, hi, are you there? And welcome to the show. Are you lurking in the background with your gang?
Of course I am. Where else would I be on a Thursday at 3:00 Eastern?
Yeah, where else would you be? Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I have a nighttime sensibility for this, obviously, because, where I am, it's nighttime, although it's not going to be night much tonight because I don't know what time the sun setteth round here, but it's probably about sometime after 10 o'clock. And if you're up in Bonnie, Scotland, I think tonight, if you're in the northern parts of Scotland, I don't think there's any darkness at all today, or certainly for a few days, because they're so far north, they don't bother with any nighttime, which probably explains a great deal, I suppose. I don't know quite what. And I've not seen any news of people out and about measuring the sun or dancing in it or whatever, but I suppose there's quite a bit of that going on. I don't know if it's got over to you. You've heard of this ancient stonework we have over here called Stonehenge. Are you familiar with that, Paul, at all?
I've heard passing mention of it. I haven't studied it or toured the place, of course.
Yeah. No, well, I don't think many people have these. Well, certainly not recently, because they put barriers up and then they wanted to charge people to go and see it. And this is not really a Stonehenge show today, but there may be a lot of people there tonight. I suspect Druids kind of turn up, the ancient order of the Druids, who are quite nice, some of them. I don't know. There's a lot of sort of, oh, no, they're evil and all this, that, and the other, but that's probably not the case. I actually knew a Druid back in the 80s, actually. Great guy, really good. Smoked roll-ups, great Druid, one of the best Druids I ever met. And but they'll be hanging around down there because the thing's a great sort of summer solstice and timing device for measuring the movement of the heavens and all this kind of stuff. So it's a pretty strong part of our culture. But the other day, some goofy crew turned up and sprayed it a color or something like that. You know, these sort of protests. I don't know if you get them. Yeah. Do you get them over there where people turn up and want to sort of urinate on pictures or set fire to them?
Oh, yeah.
Do you get that stuff?
Yeah, we get it everywhere. I mean, it's these liberal Karens that they just want to be noticed. They scream at the top of their lungs because they just want to be heard, and they cause headaches for everybody else because they just want to matter. They want to do something that matters. Well, try personal development.
Paul Beaner, everybody. You're absolutely right. By the way, I've got a little bit of a...
I'm sorry. Oh, man, this is... Damn, we're not even 15 minutes into the show, and I've already pulled out this soapbox.
That's great.
I have to be careful.
No, that's good. You got more energy than me. I've been flagging all day, actually. I'm going, no. I felt soggy all day in the head. It's been one of those sorts of days. I don't normally have them. But, by the way, I've just got a little bit of echo coming back. Oh, it's gone now. Have you just turned it off? That's cool. I was getting a bit of kickback echo. It keeps coming in.
It's just the echo cancellation catching up. I barely made the start of the show, barely did, and I still don't know if everything is configured correctly. So the Radio Ranch conference room is connected in listen-only mode right now. I will try and bring you guys in so you can join us in the second hour if you wish to. But for the first hour, just sit back, relax, grab a soft drink, whatever.
Cool. Great. So for those of you that may not know, Paul turns up here and he brings another crew in on another channel. So just to do the whole station ID thing, we're here on WBN 324. That's our main home for this show from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the UK. The main area for chat is on Rumble. We stream this out onto the Rumble video platform. You don't get to see how handsome Paul is or how handsome I am. This is for everybody's health and safety directive. We thought it would the best for everybody's psychological health. We don't want to upset you too much. And so that we also go out on Free Fall Radio South Africa, which is connected through to the WBN group in some way, which is great. We're also on Radio Soapbox. We might be on Eurofolk Radio. I'm trying to bolt and glue. I'm sort of like a radio tart. I'm trying to bolt as many feed lines in as we can. And then Paul, of course, turns up with his gang in the background, which is always a bit worrying at first, but there we go.
And Global Voice Radio Network.
And Global Voice Radio.
GlobalVoiceRadio.net.
Cool. So we're doing a bit of cross-selling here, which is probably very naughty, and at some point I might get my knuckles wrapped, but I hope not. Actually, speaking of WBN shows, because Radio Soapbox is effectively simulcasting a lot of the WBN schedule for now as we try and find and locate highly talented English, as best we can, or British performers and radio people, and we're sort of going slowly down that path. We'll see how it all comes together, and then we'll review it maybe in 6 months' time, see whether we've been able to make a good deal of it or whatever. But earlier on, the show before this is just like this show. It's Alex Jones. We're exactly the same, really. Not quite. But he was talking about, he has some advert running for a T-shirt. And he kept on using this word humanity, which makes me grind my teeth, you see, because I get a bit grindy. It's not humanity that gets me. It's this human race stuff. And he was kind of going down this thing that, we've got to come together because otherwise it'll all get very tribal. And I'm going, but I want it to get very tribal. I mean, I'm really a tribal guy, In fact, nature says, be in tribes. And I think we need to be with nature, you see. So I found that a little puzzling for me. People come up to you. I don't know if they come up to you, Paul, but they come up to me and they say, what about the human race? And I say, well, I've never met anybody that's in it. I'm not in it. There's no such thing. But there is humanity. So I'm kind of getting muddled there. But there is humanity. But no, there's no such thing as the human race. There are all these different races, which, of course, brings me back to one of my favorite hot topics, which I think is becoming ever more salient and important. Along with the whole issue of the banking thing. And I've heard more and more people now banging on about banking. Maybe it's because I'm talking about it so much, but I've been talking about it for 25 years. So, you kind of think that you would, but it's useful. There's some interesting things. On one of the stations that WBN themselves simulcast is a station called TNT. Today's News Talk, is it? I think that's what it stands for. It's pretty well screwed together. High energy, sort of, on a different level to the sorts of things that we screw together here. It's more sort of in line with standard mainstream broadcasting, but with alternative voices questioning things. And they had Nick Griffin on this morning. Are you familiar with or have ever heard of Nick Griffin, Paul?
No. Never heard of him.
He's I think in the past he's been a divisive character, but he's been, for the last few years, whilst he's been sort of out of politics, because he used to be in it, he was the leader of the British National Party. And about 2008, 2009, they were as strong as they've ever been. I don't understand the whole of the nature of the collapse of them. Collapse is probably too strong a word, actually, but the momentum that they'd gained came to a kind of juddering halt over a period of time when Nick Griffin was in charge of it. But since then, he's been a regular guest with Andrew Carrington Hitchcock. And I wouldn't mind, I think, trying to get him on here. We've never really spoken at length, although he did invite me on to something about a year and a half ago, and I just couldn't do it. But he's said some really excellent things. And anyway, TNT had him on as a guest. The host was a guy called Lembit Opik. That really is his name, Lembit Opik. He's of East European descent, I think, with a name like that. But he's fluent in, he's probably grown up here, but I'm just saying that's his name. It was quite lively, particularly as I suppose they were kind of before that show from different ends of the political spectrum. But they got round to talking about banking. And people are talking, I think Lembit Opik was saying that, well, if we can get the bank sorted out, then we can reduce the interest rates and everything. And I'm muttering, going, no, Lembit, there won't be any interest rates. There won't be a bank like you're thinking of it. But it's intriguing that it's coming up so often. I hear it all over the place, and I think it's more than think. I think there's a massive groundswell of people literally are not going to consent to anything much. Now, maybe I'm becoming Ronnie optimist about this, Paul. I don't know what the mood's like in the States, but I just sense, it's based on my supermarket encounters. That's my market research pool. I go to the supermarket. I speak to a man. He tells me we're all going to kick off any day now. And I'm going, I think that would be wise. I think we might as well have a go at all that kind of stuff. What's it like over there? Do you get a sense that sort of the sorts of things that we talk about and discuss here, the pursuit of the truth of the situation, do you get a sense that it's permeating into a wider circle of people over there? What do you think?
Yes and no. I should, but I don't go out of my way to broach these topics with other people around here because I live in an intensely liberal part of the country, and I pretty much keep to myself. But I am seeing evidence that people know something ain't right. Mm-hmm. And they're really not saying it. It's like their mannerisms. It's the look on their face. It's the humph, that again, and all this stuff.
Yep.
They're not really talking about it, but it's bugging them. So
I got the same feeling. I think it's happening. People seem to be more willing to, you can go a little bit deeper into topics and do that sort of thing. I'm just looking at the chat here. I was just talking about just a few moments ago about Nick Griffin and the BNP, the British National Party. And Reconciliation writes, BNP was killed by Nigel Farage. It was. In fact, somebody sent me a clip of Farage the other day bragging about this. And this is, we're not having, I think, what party was in it at the time? UKIP. Was it UKIP? The UK Independence Party. And he was really reveling in the fact that whatever he'd done, he basically screwed it over. But I think they raised up UKIP and it took votes away from what BNP was picking up. Effectively, sort of like the window of interested people in the BNP was widening. Farage arrives and closes it down by providing a much better alternative, you see. But he was talking about this. They use this phrase over here. They use it in your neck of the woods as well. I've seen it recently. In fact, they probably use it all across Europe. This thing called the extreme right, a thing which doesn't exist. I mean, if there were an extreme right, let's suppose I'm it. I'll be the extreme right. All the reprobates in Rumble, all the grumblers, the Rumble grumblers and bumblers and dissemblers, and all the bright people there, we're all probably extreme right. Now, extreme right by today's standards, because of the movement of, the Overton window, would basically be Harold Wilson's Labour Party in the 1960s, which, so the Labour Party is the equivalent to your Democrats, right? That's how far it's moved. There isn't anybody that represents the idea of the right at all. And if you're in the center now, whatever all these sorts of terminologies, I can't believe I'm saying all this political stuff, but you kind of get drawn into it a bit. If you're in the center, you're a right winger, and of course it's absolutely fatuous to say such a thing, but they do say it, and they just keep moving it further and further to the left, to the nanny statism. Don't worry about anything. We want a more powerful government, and we'll sort everything out. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I see. Yeah, like you've been sorting out everything during my life. Oh yeah, I get it now, that kind of thing. So I think you've got a similar thing going on over there, don't you? I'm pretty sure you do.
Oh yeah. Whenever they want to close the gap between one party or another, or widen the gap between one party or another, they come up with something to distract the people. Ooh, look, shiny object over here, and people's their brains go on neural overload. I can't help it. I don't know what to think about this. And basically, they can change the entire political landscape of an election. And if that doesn't work, they just steal the election.
Yeah,
who was it
they
that
do.
said?
Yeah, they do.
Who was it that said, "I care not for who the vote is cast, but
it's Stalin.
For who counts the votes."
Yeah, it doesn't matter who casts the votes. It's who counts them. And we're paraphrasing here. But yeah, right. Joseph Stalin said that. And he's right. He's absolutely right. Yeah. Of course, people have worried about that for an awful long time. There's a comment in here from Warren about Nigel Farage. He says, "My ex-hero," well done, Warren, is a shill, I agree, and a gaslighter, and not to be trusted. No, not to be trusted at all. He talks absolute blather at times. Of course, he's got that. I don't know how many cigarettes he smoked to get his voice so resonant. He's the only one that actually sounds okay, right? That's from an audio point of view. He actually sounds like a man, right? But it's an impossibly silly situation that we find ourselves in. Nothing will. I think they've shipped him out anyway, Paul. Not that you have to pay close attention to British politics, because it's not worth it, other than to see what kind of ruse they're about to run to pull the wool over everybody's eyes for the next number of years. But there's a party sprung up here called Reform, or maybe it's been kicking around. And yet again, it would be classed as right-wing. It's a joke. It's nothing of the sort. Nobody, of course, is talking about the things that actually need to be fixed. And as I droned on about last week, and will continue, maybe I should stop saying that. It's not droning, it's reminding. And I just feel that we've all got to keep doing this in a sort of cheerful way, that that the bank is very, very, very bad. And this was coming up on this show this morning. There was a later show actually on TNT, because I'm sort of tuning in, making sure stations work and stuff like that. And I can't remember the name of the guest. She was fantastic. And she was saying that people are at a point of not consenting. They are literally becoming a joke. We're going to have to keep pushing it so that everybody starts to rock around laughing. But they're not to be countenanced, these people. But there's kind of a worry. There definitely is, because the puppet that they've put at the head of the Labour Party, an extremely low energy guy called Keir Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer. I don't know why he's a sir. Some of the things that he's got lined up are not good. This guy, I mean, I think the most telling comment from him, although they do like to rub your nose in it, and that's no doubt part of it, he said he didn't like going to Westminster as much as he liked hanging around with the globalists in Europe. Well, go and hang around with them, Keir, then. Bye. Bye. They're all in on that sort of line of things. Your so-called Democratic Party is the same. And it's a sort of a modern, it's the Bolshevik Revolution 100 years on with high-tech database surveillance and this, that, and the other. But in essence, there's no real difference because they're seeking to overthrow the natural sort of law systems and seats of government. And of course, our job is to overthrow them. These people have to be overthrown. They are usurpers, trying to lay a claim to the throne. So I think pretty much you've got the same thing going on over there.
Oh yeah, yep, exactly. There's nothing new under the sun. It's a global deal.
It is.
Everybody, for one reason or another. I mean, the nuances of society and political belief and speech and everything else, there are subtle differences. But if you look at the globe as a whole, it seems that like the contributing factor is everywhere there's a central bank, pretty much the same stuff is happening. Now, why is that? You think maybe that the people behind the central banks might also be behind some of the political landscape and the social media and societal control? Maybe? Or would that be a conspiracy theory?
I think you might be onto something there. I'd never really thought about that before. He said, tongue firmly planted in cheek. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there is. Well, I noticed them talking about banking on 2 shows today on TNT. And it's the one to drive home because the consequences of not knowing it is that we have the sort of public discourse that we have now and that we've had for a long time where people actually take this economic forecasting stuff seriously, not because it necessarily has to be genuine, but because we don't know any better, or the public don't know any better. There's no way of, if the whole system is manipulated, which it is, right? And Nick Griffin brought this up to his credit today as well. It's excellent stuff. He was talking about it. What can we possibly know about the true state of affairs? Not much is the answer. And it's like I was saying in that little speech I did last week, which I haven't sent out round Telegram, but I think I ought to, actually. I got some favorable feedback on that. It could have been better, but it was a first stab at these things to sort of cover that stuff. And George Hobbs, the fact hunter, kindly asked me for it, and he stuck it up on his website. So shout out to George. Thanks very much for doing that. Great write-up as well. So, of course, it massaged my ego considerably, Paul. I mean, not that I've got one, but if I did have one, it would have been massaged.
I think it was brilliant.
We're going to do a few
just going on record. I think it was brilliant.
I think we're going to do a few more. I think I need to just hone them down, and they could get even more forceful. I really enjoyed sort of doing it. And, I used to work with someone, back in the troublesome days, back in the mid to late 90s, during that period of mayhem in my life, as I was introduced to an alternative world of banking duplicity and corruption. He had a phrase which I really like. So Phil, he was. I haven't seen him since then, and I don't know what's happened to him. And he's probably not listening to this, but he was quite a canny guy. He used to work certain things. He used to sit around with sheets of paper and work things out about how to structure local currency systems. And they would have all worked if you're not tampered with. But he had a little phrase, which is, well, it's where I heard it from first. You may have heard it. He said, all authority is assumed. And it is. And I think maybe we should start assuming it then. Why don't we try that out? Because I remember Orson Welles. Hello, I'm Orson Welles. I can't even do his voice, really. I should practice that. But Orson Welles was being interviewed by Michael Parkinson, the doyen of liberal guest show interview hosts. And he was asking Welles about politicians. He said, what do you think of them? And he said, I think it's pretty simple. He said, I view them as actors. He said, I know, because I am one. He said, and that's what they are. That was 1973 or 4, And so the truth has been said, as we've mentioned here, by many good people up and down the historical line. It's finding a way to actually build that up into a kind of consensus, a large-scale voice, so that these people shut up, go away, whatever we have to do. That we're probably going to have to do something more than that, possibly. I do like the word being sectioned. It sounds dreadful, doesn't it? But they need to be sectioned. When I first heard it, I used to think it meant chopping people up into little pieces. I thought, oh, that's a bit dreadfully harsh, isn't it? But I went and looked it up, and of course it means basically putting them away so they can't interfere with the whoop and woof of public life. And many of them do need to be sectioned, I'm afraid. They're very, very bad people. That sort of double act that they have with the banking class, you can see how entrenched, how diseased, how involved and sophisticated it's become, because there's no way that politicians are going to speak the sorts of truthful things I think that we hit upon from time to time around here and that come from the commenters in the Rumble chat, etc. They're not going to do it because they're under colossal pressure from their benefactors not to say such things. And if the carrot doesn't work with them, or the removal of the carrot, they will always have a stick with which to, make them an offer they can't refuse. People that don't think that those sticks exist are living in La La Land. I mean, it's effectively a very sophisticated mafiosi operation. I can't think of it as it's a racket, it's a protection racket, but they're expanding it on a global scale, and that's kind of what we're having to endure. Just going back to Nigel Farage as well, because I meant to say this, I think it's pronounced Farage, but if it's pronounced Farage, he would have a garage, wouldn't he? But if you have a garage, is he Nigel Farage? I don't know really. I must get him on the show and try and find out if Nigel Farage has a garage. Because that's really probably where he ought to stay. But he's running around charming everybody at the moment, so he's getting a lot of leeway, and that, I think, is the telling sign. He's been giving a lot of airtime, so there's a reason for that. If they didn't want him to have a lot of airtime, if they didn't want you to be aware of him, he wouldn't be there. If he was that's my view. If he was a genuine threat to the established order, we wouldn't know as much about him as we do right now. I could be talking naively. I probably am, but that's my sort of take on it from a distance. I
think you should probably leave the port for after the show.
Who, me?
Farage.
Farage? Yeah, no, it's Nigel Farage. It must be French, right? That's probably the problem with it. Farage. Oi, Farage. No, it's not Farage. It's Nigel Farage.
Well, okay. Yeah. All right. Let's see if we can get somebody in Rumble to come up with a song suggestion, because I don't know if we have anything queued.
Look, they're all loving it in the chat here. I've got
something.
All these comments are coming in about his name. You see, it's important. Someone's just said that Farage is also a correct pronunciation. Thanks, Warren. That's great. Someone's written, rides in a carriage, Nigel Farage. You see, there you go. I wonder if it's got anything to do with forage. Whatever. Anyway, actually, you know what? It's just reminded me of one of the few clips I've got lined up for tonight. So, what did I do at the weekend? Oh, no, not that. You don't want to hear about that. I was on with Ria Bow on Sunday. I forgot to mention this last week. Not that necessarily you need more of me each week, but I was on, as I've mentioned here before, the flagship show here on WBN 324 is Ria's show, Sunday Long Live, which starts at an inhospitable 6 a.m. for people on the Eastern time zone, with you lot out there in the States. So if you're in Pacific time, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. So I don't suppose there are too many listeners at that time. But it's a 4-hour show, and she has regular guests on in hours 2 and 3, and then a rotating guest in hour 4. I turn up about once a month. And where did I put this? I've got to find this because I'm trying to actually find it and make it all linked together. But you can see that I'm struggling, right? I'm trying to actually get it all together. Where's my little thing? I'll find it in a second. Oh, here we go. We're getting close. Yes, getting closer. Right, I've got it. So, in that little speech thing I did last week, I put that clip in of Liz Truss, which that really needs to be sent around everywhere. As I said, that was one of the most truthful things, if not the most truthful thing, an ex-British Prime Minister has ever said in a minute. And just to recap, if you didn't catch it last week, What she said was that she went in, you may recall she was the shortest serving prime minister ever. 49 days she lasted. No one's lasted less than that. So at least she'll go down in the record books for that. And she wanted to do things. She was talking to Steve Bannon, and she said, I wanted to go in, I wanted to change things. And when I got in there, I found out that I couldn't, and that the Bank of England basically had more power, and that the prime minister can be sacked, but the governor of the Bank of England cannot. And therefore, the governor of the Bank of England has more power than the prime minister. And that was the whole point of me putting that thing together last week. That's the same situation for you guys, as you well know, in the States. The money power have the deciding casting vote. In fact, they're laying the game plan and everything like that. Well, whilst I was on talking about this and mentioning it to Rhea during that segment, she mentioned a clip that she had, and she played it during the show, and she kindly sent it to me. And you won't have heard it, but it features Nigel Farage. Our Nige. Nigel Farage talking from a different perspective, similar length, about 1 minute long. I'm going to play it now. Here we go. This is what he had to say. Should come through.
But then I sat outside the hotel in Mexico. I watched the Liz Truss quasi-Kwarteng budget. And I'm going, this is great. I love this. This is amazing. But as the budget went on, I began to realize, crikey, they're doing an awful lot at once. And it was too much too soon. It was all the right direction. It was all about reducing the size of a state. It was all about giving people incentives through sensible taxation levels, not punitive taxation levels. All of it was right, but done perhaps in the wrong order, done far too quickly. And my goodness me, the International Monetary Fund, the Bank of England, all the globalist forces literally got together to condemn, smash the budget. Unbelievable. The Bank of England sold UK bonds on the eve of the budget. I mean, a willful act from the Bank of England to destabilise an elected British government. Quite extraordinary things that went on.
Hi, this is Dave Gahary.
Oops, sorry about that. Hang on just a minute. That's my thing, just playing everything in an order, which I didn't want it to do. So there we go. A willful act. I mean, why didn't you use the word of treason? Why didn't he add the word treason in there? And then add an offence for which, if proven guilty, the right punishment is death. Why did he not say that? Don't we do hanging anymore? Oh, no, we don't. They phased that out, probably to protect the bankers. Hey-ho, there we go. These two little clips, even though we're not Farage fans, are we, everybody? That's not what it's about. But you see, it's a bit like the old broken clock syndrome. Every now and again, even your worst enemies, he's not that. But the effect is going to be bad. But they can be right. They can spot on, nail it. And then, of course, it just drifts out of the public discourse. I mean, the newspapers should have just been getting hold of this stuff and running major stories for a month on it, saying, you know what, it turns out that we really need to actually cut the Bank of England down to size. In fact, we need to really disassemble it. It needs to be taken apart, and the ownership of it needs to be handed over directly, because we've got computers now to do this sort of thing and track it directly to the British. The British should own that bank. If that's the bank that rules these islands, and it rules a hell of a lot more than just that, or it's certainly part of that ruling system, it needs to be taken down. And then when Keir Starmer gets elected, because they're telling us he is, he could do something really good. And then I wake up and go for another glass of port, because that's not ever going to happen, is it? And yet we want it to. So there you go. So well done, Nigel Farage, for saying it. It was good, but I'd not heard that one before. So it was a bit. We're swapping clips. I'll swap you this clip for that clip. Okay, got not got, bit like playing cards. So yeah. So it's in there. Yeah.
That was a great clip.
It was.
It sounds like a bright guy. Well, yeah. At least he was in that particular instance.
Though he is bright, he's articulate. I mean, he's an ex-city guy. He's got charm. There's no two ways about it. You've got to just there's no point sort of ranting about it in an infantile way. He's charming. He comes across with more presence than just about anybody else. He does. The others are goofy. I mentioned it here. Rishi Sunak. Oh, he's not even English, right? Sorry, he just isn't. And he's a parachute prime minister, like all the previous ones. They've just been dropped in there by the great and the good of the Conservative Party, or whoever tells the great and the good of the Conservative Party who to drop in there. So he's just silly, and he's an ex-Goldman Sachs employee. I mean, they're basically saying, hey, we've just commercialized your country and we're just going to sort of asset strip it, which they are doing in all sorts of ways. And then we've got Sir Keir Starmer, the guy that did not prosecute the Jimmy Savile case and has done all sorts of goofy things and who would rather hang around with globalists in Europe. I don't know, doing whatever they do with their globalist type party type things. So that's kind of what we've got. So Farage, actually, in comparison to that, looks and sounds like a man, which probably makes him a perfect foil for splitting votes or whatever they're going to do. Reform will come up short. They go, oh, if Reform hadn't been there and split the Conservative vote, Labour would never have got in. But this is all by design. Anyway, the whole thing is a theatrical production. We're more like theatre critics. It's not, oh, I didn't like Act 2. No, that bit where Farage came on and did that didn't work, did it? And you got the same thing.
I think we should hold like a 15-second bit close to the cuff, because I'm sure there will be a video that will come up that it'll work with. You've just commercialized your country. What are you going to do now? I'm going to Disney World.
Hello. My name's Rishi Sunak, and I'm from Goldman Sachs. Now, I'm the Prime Minister of Great Britain, apparently. Anyway, your economy's going to be great and all this, that, and the other. It's not worth listening to. And it seems, here I am, can you hear me grasping at straws in the background? Boy, am I grasping at them. It seems that more of the media are waking up, or certainly the bits that I listen to. I mean, I can't listen to the BBC. It's just an insane asylum, really. It's just, they're nutters in there, totally gone. A complete globalist enclave of goofy, backwards people. But it does seem to be getting across that the whole thing is looking like what it actually is. Now, people are beginning to see a ridiculous farce, a totally orchestrated communication space. I mean, I've mentioned here before, there is a thing over here, although I haven't seen any televised recently. This doesn't mean to say they're not going on, called Prime Minister's Question Time. And the Prime Minister rocks up for 1 hour a week, Wednesdays or something, I don't know, after they've been down the pub. And people are allowed to ask him questions. And my question is, why doesn't somebody then actually do that? Because when you hear these communications that come out of the mouths of the political representatives, they're not questions at all. They're like setups so that he can answer in a particular way and prove a point. The whole condition of the so-called communication space stinks, is useless, lacks spontaneity, lacks truth totally. And of course, this is because they're all short on courage, or they've all got a threat hanging over their head. I mean, I don't know, but they're not free to speak. They're really not free to speak at all, which is, no surprise to anybody, actually, I suppose.
Well, there's a couple of things they do. Number one, there's Galilean dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. They create a problem that will cause the people to react in such a way that they will cry out for the solution that they wanted to implement in the first place, but didn't have the stones to do it. And then there's another premise that they operate under, and that is presumption and assumption. Mm-hmm. And you talked about assumption of political power and influence earlier. They proceed on presumption and believe that it is better to beg forgiveness than to ask for permission, because they knew if they asked for permission, they'd never, ever be able to do it.
No.
So those are the most deadly tools in their toolbox. And they use them every single day.
Mm.
How do we stop it?
Well, maybe we're on the way to doing it, he said desperately. I don't know. You use the word tool. Does the word tool in America have a negative connotation? Do you ever call people a tool?
No, it's just a tool.
All right. Over here it does. Not that you can say it all the time, right? If you call someone a tool, right? It's like an insult. Okay, you tool. Okay. The origins of it, I think, are probably sexual. Okay, to do with a man's tool. Right, that's really what it is. As most insults are, by the way. As most insults
But dumb
are.
as a hammer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you've got that. But yeah, so, you know, so they're all a bunch of tools, really. And yeah, I'll have to look that one up, actually. The etymological roots of the insult, you tool, I don't know what it is. Shout out to the Rumblers if anybody knows. The couple of comments here. Ether writes, Greenspan on video, I remember this, I think, while back, effectively telling Congress with their questions to get lost. I remember some clip about that. You're not allowed to ask us any questions. You know, oh, really? No, you know, go away, you silly politicians.
Who was it in the U.S.? I mean, contempt of Congress. There's someone charged with contempt of Congress. Let's see if that actually goes anywhere. Let's see if Congress has any teeth. You know?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Let's see. Nice comment here from Eric. Hi, Eric. Great talking to you the other day. It's all getting a little bit cozy around here, isn't it? But I quite like it. Eric writes, Farage does what Blair did. You remember Tony Blair? Ooh, just had a little shudder then. Tells people what they want to hear, then does the complete opposite when in power. Yeah, that's really it. But hasn't that actually, it's possibly always been that way to some degree in politics. I mean, look at the Honourable Edward Heath. Now, let's move swiftly on. He was great. He's a top wretch. Worse than that. Absolutely worse than that. An absolute foul creature. And he was the guy that manhandled us into Europe, knowing full well that it wasn't about a common market, but it was about the sort of homologation of all the nations into one superstate, which we don't need because it doesn't work, because it's very expensive and it's commie. It's as simple as that. Like all their ideas don't work because they're based on asset stripping the people that produce things, which is generally pretty much what they want. Music request in here. Warren's the only one that puts in music requests, you lazy oafs out there in Rumble. I just thought I'd try and insult, see where it gets me. Probably not far. So I'll give you this, Paul, if you can find it. I'm on for this as well. Rawhide by Frankie Lane. Yeah? What do you think? Think we've got time
I actually have that pretty close to the cuff.
I kind of imagine that you probably woke up to that every morning, that it was your starting track for the day. Get him up. Yeah, it's a great song. I quite like that. Yeah. Okay, so there you go. There is music. We got no music set up for today. That doesn't mean to say we can't instantaneously acquire it and transform it into listening pleasure. But yeah, we'll need another one. Okay, so anybody want to cough up another one or make another suggestion? I'll keep my eyes peeled here, and we might find another tune for later on. The Barren Knights. I'm shuddering. All right, under new management, 1966, the Barren Knights. That's worrying reconciliation. I'm worried about that. I have you might not know the Barren Knights. They were kind of a sort of comedy group, actually there was something like that. I don't think I listened too much. I just know that as a teenager, it wasn't for me. I can tell you that, but who knows? So there we go. Yeah. Look at that, me losing my thread. Where were we going? What were we just talking about? See, I've got diversity.
I don't have a clue.
Don't you?
But,
anybody out there have a clue what we were talking about? Come on.
Every single show reaffirms the fact that I need to only drink when you're playing a clip or a song. Otherwise, I would be spewing all over the place. Just take a sip of coffee. You come out with something hilarious. I can't.
Well, there we go. We've got to do that. So yeah. Hey, by the way, if any of you out there do want to call in, and it might be good practice, he said desperately. So I've mentioned here before, 2 weeks' time. It's Thursday, the 4th of July. Now, Paul might not be able to make it because he'll be drunk from early on in the morning because it's the 4th of July in America, and it's actually a much more important day in America than our general election will be to us. Seriously, it's much more important. But I'm planning to have an election night special here, Paul. So if anybody wants to be a reporter on the ground, that wants to call into the show and just make stuff up. I don't want anything that's factual because the election's not factual. You can just call in and make stuff up. Let us know. Get in touch, right? And if you want to call in tonight at any point, go to paulenglishlive.com/call, CALL, paulenglishlive.com/call. It routes you through to a little online audio studio that we've got here, and we can patch you into the show, and you can distress us and say things and do whatever you like, really. So, yeah, why not? It's got to make some rambunctious comments, all in the best possible taste, of course. That's what we would expect. So now the song suggestions are piling in. I can't even keep up with them. Paul, are you looking at the Rumble chat? Anyway, song suggestions. All right. Sorry.
Yeah, if you can grab the titles and drop them to me in Skype, I'll do my best.
Well, I might have to plan.
I just don't have an open channel to be able to.
Oh, I'll just do it. Don't worry. You just sit and enjoy the show. You don't have to keep remixing them all the time. It's ridiculous, really. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy to do it. And in fact, I actually downloaded a new version of Audacity over the middle of the night, and unfortunately, I think I got a copy of the encoder library, the lame encoder library, that had a case of the clap, because my computer started doing really strange things about 3:00 in the morning.
Right.
And I still don't know if it's completely healthy, but we'll see. So I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I haven't.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Look, we'll find something. Maybe you and I could do a duet or something. Anybody want to join in? We'll do a choral piece live online.
Oh, no, that's down. Not happening.
No. That would be questionable, wouldn't it? That would be poor taste. That would be a silly thing to do.
There would be no question about that poor taste.
Yeah, I know.
That would be crazy.
Oh, hang on just a minute. Oh, look at that. I didn't mean to do that. You see, this is what happens when I press things.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you see, that's why I have to be really, really careful what buttons I press.
Yeah. If anybody wants to be a technical assistant and show producer for this show, free bottle of port once a year. I'm quite tight. Give us a call, will you, if you can. You know where I am. Actually, you don't, which is all part of it. But yes. Now, actually, we're coming up to the end. So I've got another sort of phase to move into. I wanted to talk about. I mentioned early on at the start of the show. We'll just hang on. I've got to dig up a song or something. But I want to go back to the football thing. It's not really about football at all. I think it was Billy maybe wrote to me on the Telegram group, Billy Silver, and if not, my apologies for forgetting who it was. I couldn't go through the whole of the Telegram thread, but they said, "Hey, the football thing that you did, do you think we could sort of formalize it and knock it into a script type thing?" Which I'm on with, and I just couldn't get it finished today. I just certain things came up, house fell down, things like that. So I was a bit distracted with a few things and couldn't get it finished off. But I'm going to try and do that. It probably needs to be sort of wound into this sort of political speech type stuff, So maybe we could do that in that particular format. But I am going to do it because even when I'm out with, I probably mentioned this last week, when I'm out with people socially and I talk about it as an idea. I don't sort of pitch them on it. I say, look, a good way to kind of get these points across is to talk about football. And they go, is it? And I go, well, yeah, but in this particular way, because there's so many people apparently follow football. There was a football match on, actually, Paul, earlier today with a team in it called England, although I was hard-pressed to see how they could get away with that under the Trades Descriptions Act. Anyway, it was suitably tedious beyond belief, and the television pundits are possibly the most exhausting personalities on TV to actually hear them droning on about tactics and all this other intricate crap which no one cares about because the matches lack passion and are of no cultural relevance whatsoever. It's like watching paint dry. I know I'm in a very small minority when I say this, and I wouldn't go out and say things like that amongst a bunch of inebriated so-called England fans. That would be very unwise. But I'm hard-pressed to see, what relevance it's got to what we're doing. Yes, anyway. Have you got any songs lined up, Paul?
I'm working on that.
Oh, right,
Rawhide,
okay. We'll wait for
even as we
Rawhide.
speak.
We'll wait for Rawhide. We'll wait for a bit of Rawhide. I've got... so that was that. Farage in his garage. What else? He might be in a garage. I know I am. Oh, yeah, I've got a little clip here. This will lead us up to the break. Now, this is old. The sound quality is not brilliant. It's an American clip. But I thought it might be quite useful in terms of the difference between a constitutional republic and a democracy. All right? The difference between a constitution. Yeah, it's 2 minutes and 52 seconds long. It's quite earnest, as it would be from that time. I mean, just looking at the film footage, you don't need to see the guy. He's just sat still reading it off a sheet of paper. You might even know the voice or whatever. I think even I might. But it's interesting because you, Paul, of course, you're in a constitutional republic. And we live in a democracy. Isn't that lovely, everybody? So let's listen to what this chap said. I think he went on to become a famous newscaster. He's very young here, but here we go.
A democracy is a political system in which the people periodically, by majority vote at the polls, select their rulers. The rulers then have absolute power to make whatever laws they please by majority vote among themselves. In a constitutional republic, the people also, by majority vote at the polls, select rulers, who make laws by majority vote among themselves. But the rulers cannot make any laws they please because the Constitution severely restricts their lawmaking power. The ideal of a democracy is universal equality. The ideal of a constitutional republic is individual liberty. In this century, great strides have been made toward the goal of subverting our republic and transforming it into a democracy. The foremost tactic of the subverters is subversion of language. By calling America a democracy until people thoughtlessly accept and use the term, totalitarians have obscured the real meaning of American principles of government. Writers of the Constitution were anxious to safeguard liberty against dictatorship, monarchy they called it. But their chief anxiety was to protect the country against democracy. Edmund Randolph, delegate to the Constitutional Convention from Virginia, said the general object of the convention was to provide a cure for the follies and fury of democracy. Elbridge Gerry and Roger Sherman, delegates from Massachusetts and Connecticut, urged the Constitutional Convention to create a system to eliminate the evils that flow from the excess of democracy. Alexander Hamilton, delegate from New York, said, "We are now forming a Republican government. Real liberty is not found in democracy. If we incline too much to democracy, we shall soon shoot into a monarchy." John Adams, one of the giants of the American Revolutionary period, said, "Democracy will envy all, contend with all, endeavor to pull down all. And when by chance it happens to get the upper hand for a short time, democracy will be revengeful, bloody, and cruel." America was founded not as a democracy, but as a constitutional republic. We pledge allegiance to the republic, for which our flag stands, not to a democracy. The Constitution requires a republican form of government for all states, but does not mention democracy, and neither does the Declaration of Independence or the Bill of Rights. Someone asked him what kind of government the convention had given America, and Franklin replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." Very old and very wise, Franklin saw through the mists of time to the day when Americans might trade their freedom in a constitutional republic for the promise of government guaranteed equality and security in a democracy. And beyond that, to the day when democracy inevitably degenerates into dictatorship, guaranteeing nothing but poverty and serfdom for the people it robs and rules.
So sorry about the sound quality there. We could have probably tidied that up if I had a bit of time. But the points are valid. Do you think you still live in a constitutional republic, Paul? Do you think you still live in one?
Oh, no. No, not at all. Because every time a political pundit gets behind a podium, he's talking about preserving our democracy, how we're spreading democracy around the world by literally kicking the nads off of other leaders just because their countries have resources that the globalists want to seize. They use us as the stick. We're not the carrot, we're the stick. So, yeah, it's absolutely a democracy. And they're absolutely unabashed at admitting it. And the thing is, the stupid sheeple, they're saying, preserve our democracy and all that. They know nothing of a constitutional republic. What is that? Anyway, we've got Rawhide on deck whenever you're ready.
Oh, yeah. I like this. Everybody put your cowboy hats on. I was looking at cowboy stuff before. Actually, one of the early shows, I did that thing, I think it was show number 5, because I was processing them the other day, about the paintings of Mark Maggiore. And if I'm not familiar, anybody, with that artist, I would add Mark is his first name. Obviously, everybody knows that, right? Maggiore, Maggiore. Look him up. You will be blown away. I guarantee it, by the quality of that man's work. It's the best. You're never going to look at clouds seriously the same way ever again once you've seen a Mark Maggiore cloud. They're better than the real thing. I know that's a ridiculous thing to say, but they're absolutely amazing, amazing clouds. Okay, we've got this here. So we're going to take a break. Night and Day's joined us. Hi, Night and Day. And he says, his comment about Rawhide, he says, Rawhide, only when I fall off my bike and land on my butt. Well, we hope this brings it on, Night and Day. I hope you are falling off your bike. Here we go. Here's Frankie Lane and Rawhide. We'll be back after this.
Rolling, 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 keep rolling, 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 though the streams are swollen, keep them doggies rolling, right through rain and wind and weather, hell-bent for leather, wishing my gal was by my side. All the things I'm missing, good fiddles, love and kissing, are waiting at the end of my ride. Move 'em on, hit 'em up, hit 'em up, move 'em on, hit 'em up, Rawhide. Cut 'em out, ride 'em in, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, Rawhide. Keep moving, 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 though they're disapproving, keep them doggies moving, Rawhide. Don't try to understand them, just rope and throw and brand them. Soon we'll be living high and wide. My heart's calculating, my true love will be waiting at the end of my ride. Move 'em on, hit 'em up, move 'em on, hit 'em up, Rawhide. Cut 'em out, ride 'em in, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, Rawhide.
Attention all listeners. Are you seeking uninterrupted access to WBN 324 Talk Radio despite incoming censorship hurdles? Well, it's a breeze. Just grab and download Opera Browser, then type in WBN324.zil. And stay tuned for unfiltered discussions around the clock. That's WBN324.zil.
The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing on the World Broadcasting Network are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of its owners, partners, and other hosts or this network. Thank you for listening to WBN 324 Talk Radio.
Hi, welcome back. I'm laughing not at Rawhide, good grief, So I can't say this out on air. I should do, but I'm not going to say it because it's rude. If you're in the Rumble chat, Eric von Essex has just cracked a joke in there. You might want to go and read it. It's kind of rawhide relevant. It's something to do with John Wayne. Anyway, welcome back to part 2, sort of. Yeah, we are. We're just over halfway. The timing was good there, even though we're fumbling in the run-up to it. You're listening to Paul English Live here on WBN 324. I'm here with Paul Beener, and who just processed that song into 432 hertz. It's not long enough. That song is not long enough, is it?
Great version. It's almost as good as the Blues Brothers version. Almost as good. Because I love Jake and Elroy.
It's difficult not to. It's a great film. Particularly the fact that they played it how many times that night? 15 times in the film.
Yeah.
It's the only song they knew, wasn't it?
No, it was the only song that the crowd wanted to hear. They had a full repertoire of songs, but every time they would play something different, the patrons would start throwing beer bottles at them. So they settled on Rawhide. They loved it. So they did it again.
They did again. Well, you know what? Maybe if you want to get their version, we can maybe play that. We just do the. Why don't we just play it again and again and again for the rest of the show in honor?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're sensible. Yeah, very good. Thanks for caging me. That was a stupid idea. Sorry about that.
Well, no ideas are stupid. There are no stupid ideas, but there are some that require a little bit of questioning as to whether or not you should have had them in the first place.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, swiftly moving on. Yeah, fantastic.
Yes.
I do like that. It's very evocative and all that kind of stuff. And you're right about the Blues Brothers version. It was really a lot of fun. Now, in slightly that clip that we just played, that was crappy sound quality, but it's really some fantastic points in there about the difference between a democracy and a constitutional republic. And I remember the whole thing with the U.S. Civil War. In fact, I just found a couple of books yesterday that I need to order about Lincoln, who is an ambivalent figure. He really is. And one's called The Real Lincoln by De Lorenzo, I think his surname, and the other one's by a guy called Lachlan, somebody or other. Anyway, I've found copies of them. I haven't ordered them yet, but I want to get a hold of it because that's such a pivotal point in terms of what happened to the South. And I've often likened it to what happened to Germany during World War II. It's very similar because one of the points that I saw just on the sort of liner jacket notes, I know why I'm mentioning this, because on Monday, Jeff Rents was talking to a history guy, Bill or Billy, something, I can't remember now. I'm bad with names. I'm going to stop trying to remember names. My hard drive's full. Who was going into these books and looking at the causative reasons for it. And of course, I'm mentioning it because I think that was the point at which the Constitutional Republic died during the so-called Civil War. Of course, there's nothing civil about it. It's an orchestrated event again. And one of the points that they were making was that all the wealth was in the South. There are all these different aspects to all of these conflicts. I think it's important because it's like a Bolshevik thing. It's the same patterning thing that we are enduring now. This pattern repeats up and down history. It's nearly always the same. The form of it is different, of course, because weaponry or technology or the communications tech of the time has changed. So things are either quicker or more subtle, or they look slightly different because of it. But the end result is generally the same, the sort of ruination of a highly productive part of the nation, or in some cases, the entire nation itself. And one of the points they were making is that all the wealth was in the South. And it was a great way because after that conflict, there's this thing called carpetbagging, Paul, which you must be familiar with.
Vaguely.
Oh, okay. So effectively, I mean, I'm not knowledgeable in terms of high detailed stuff, but industrialists and other types from the North came down and literally asset stripped the South bare, a process from which it's never really recovered. I remember when I used to read things like that when I was young, and I was going, what do you mean never recovered it? You could just sort of get up the next day and go, can't you? But you you can't, because it's something to do with like a hammer blow that goes into the psyche of the people. It's disturbing, and it rings wrong for centuries. I didn't really comprehend that when I was young. When you're young, a day's as long as a month is now for me. A month feels like a day did when I was 7 or something like that. So I couldn't really get my brain around that concept that, it takes them that long to recover. But you begin to see that they don't. Anyway, just stitching these completely unconnected threads together, I got this little thing that I wanted to read out as well. It's quite brief. It's to do with Aristotle. You might remember Patrick mentioned Aristotle last week, and saying that politics is whatever you contemplate, and there's a great truth in that. But I want to read this as a kind of lead-in to this thing about the football, about international football matches, and to just go over that again a little bit. Anyway, let me read you this. I don't know what book it's from, unfortunately. It's just a page from it, but it says this. For Aristotle, democracy is possible only within homogeneous ethnic groups. That means people all of the same race. Okay, I used the 4-letter evil, foul swear word. While despots have always reigned over highly fragmented societies. Hello, everybody. Hello. Which direction are we going in? Are we going into being homogenous again, or are we getting ever more highly fragmented? Don't bother writing in. I think we all know the answer to that one. It goes on, it says, a multi-ethnic society is thus necessarily anti-democratic and chaotic, for it lacks philia, 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 this profound flesh and blood fraternity of citizens. Tyrants and despots divide and rule. They want the city divided by ethnic rivalries. Hello, hello, hello. I think we're all familiar with this. The indispensable condition for ensuring a people's sovereignty, accordingly, resides in its unity. Ethnic chaos prevents all philia from developing. Now, I am going to suggest that when it comes to the realm of international football, the quality of philia has been just about totally removed, which is why, to me, it's a complete cultural, meaningless irrelevance. It's got nothing to do with the technicalities of men kicking a ball around a piece of grass. It's what its cultural resonance is, and it's practically zero. And that's why I was talking about football last week, because it seems to me that the result of this is that all the tribes that used to field national football sides apparently no longer do that. And the tournament, or these tournaments that take place, are practically valueless in terms of where they've come from, how they used to be, and what they mean now. They used to be, I think, amazing. I think they used to be amazing. I mean, okay, I was only 10 at the time, so I'm not sort of like a world expert on what is amazing. You've only been alive for a few years and getting aware of things. But I remember watching sort of World Cups in 1970, yes, I'm very old, with my dad, who used to get home from work because that was from Mexico. The matches used to start about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, UK time. Brilliant. My dad would get in, so I cut work off early, and we'd sit down and watch this football on a large black and white TV. Aye, it was black and white back then. It was amazing. I think it was, you just had this sense of all these different types of football styles, different types of people playing football in their own unique way, coming together, and all of them being literally of the nation that they were playing for. All of England was English. The whole of the German side were Germans. The Italians were all Italians. Now, of course, you can, you boring old fart. What are you talking about, right? Well, what I'm talking about is that it has to be like that, it seems to me, for it to be of any value. And so, you remember earlier on, I just mentioned that thing about Alex Jones saying that, it's humanity. We don't want tribalism. Well, I do. I do want tribalism. And I'm going to suggest that every individual is naturally bent, as it were, towards tribalism. It's great. It's absolutely fantastic. It's what made football fun. It really is, to me, it really is what made it fun. So, when I'm watching, I was mentioning earlier that the pundits on TV, when they're analyzing the match afterwards, it's like, why bother? What are you, they talk about all these technical things. There's literally, it's such a dry, dull sort of experience. There's no juice in it. And I want to mention also that this is not about disliking other races. I'm going to repeat this thing I mentioned last week. It's got nothing to do with it. If they organize, and somebody needs to, I mentioned this before, the people need to organize the World Cup. We need to organize it. And I don't care what the standard of football is. I think it would be amazing. Of course, the powers that should not be would ensure that it couldn't take place. But realistically, I just think it would be amazing. So everybody that plays for China is Chinese. Everybody that plays for Ghana is a Ghanaian. Everybody that plays for Germany is a German. That plays for France is French. For England is English, and so on and so forth. And I think it would be absolutely wonderful. No one ever looks back on the period when it was like that and says, oh, they were all racists running around not allowing people from different races to play in their national team. Nobody says that because it's simply an untruth and it's meaningless. And apart from which, as I mentioned before, given that a nation is a tribe of people, all of the same race with a shared and received history, culture, and language, the minute any team, it doesn't matter who it is, has got more than one race on the pitch, it's no longer a national side. And therefore, I am going to strongly suggest, even though this is sort of get out of the pub type talk, right? There hasn't been any international football for decades. There hasn't been any. Half of the players that think they've got England caps, they haven't got them because England never turned up on the pitch. This is my pitch, right? My pitch is this. And of course, it sounds terrible when you hear it on the first blush. You go, oh, that's awful. Do you hate all these people? No, I don't hate them. But they're not my people, are they? Unless you say, well, anybody can be anything they like, in which case now we're really in Looney Binville. We're really going down the commie route because that's what communism's all about. And the whole thing with the football stuff is it's been hijacked by this globalist mentality and the reason they picked it is because of the colossal following and interest from the working man, whether he's in Buenos Aires, Munich, Basingstoke, or Dieppe. It doesn't matter where you're from. That's the thing that bound the crowd into it. It's what made it so intense and wonderful and joyous, actually, with genuine competition, and they all have these different styles. Boy, I miss that. It was just a fantastic thing, and it's been turned into a really lame, limp-wristed, woke thing. It's awful. It really is. Anyway, there we go.
They've also used it for political positioning. The whole thing about American football players, American football, American players, football players playing American football. They take a knee, during the Star Spangled Banner. They take a knee. It's an absolute disgrace to the country. And my thoughts are, if you want to take a knee at the beginning of the game during the Star Spangled Banner, you can take a hike. We don't need you on the field. But it is just the whole wokeism, and it's tearing at the fabric of history and tradition and honor and of honor of history, of the past, of our lineage. Your lineage, my lineage, the African Americans' lineage, the Native American lineage. It's just polluting it all, tearing it apart while trying to melt us all together. What I want to see, I don't want to see a tribal thing. Okay, I don't want to see where everybody's separate and they're forced to be separate because that's the way it's supposed to be. I don't want to see that. But I don't want people to be forced to be melted together under political or social pressure. If people want to hang together and build a community and build their own lineage, build their own history, let them do it. People that want to remain separate, they can do it. Freedom without oppression, freedom without manipulation, political, social, whatever. Let's get these guys out of our lives, Well,
I agree with you. I mean, the thing is, it seems to me that you see, this word racist.
It's stupid.
Well, it's very. I think it's actually useful for us because, first of all, like I mentioned before, if you're a white guy and you start making observations like this, the first label that's going to come at you is you're a racist. Okay, what do you mean by that? Right. But the actual truth of the matter is that the people that are organizing the merging of peoples on the same bit of real estate, known as countries, they are the ultimate racists because they're saying all of you different races don't count. It's a problem that you're all different races. We're going to set up a situation to destroy all of you. I'm not trying to do that. I don't want to destroy no one. Why would you? I mean, that interview, I should have got the clip for today, but it doesn't matter. There's the interview with Muhammad Ali from 1973. I've had it for years. I think on every radio thing, I've played it every now and again because it's of profound value. Where the liberal-minded Michael Parkinson is basically wetting his knickers because Muhammad Ali is saying, the only woman that will work for me is a black American woman. That's it. He said, and it's tremendously important what he's saying. He says, she's the only person that understands me, will cook for me the way I like, knows how I talk, how I think, how I feel, we understand each other when you're from the same race in a profoundly detailed way that you will never, ever comprehend with other people. Something else might, people will say, well, they're in love and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's always going to be a bit of that. But what we're talking about is this organized way of destroying the morale of all people. That's what's taking place. Another thing as well with the football thing, I don't know if I mentioned it last time. You've got these really gifted players who are not English. Am I allowed to say that? Maybe the knock's coming at the door, but they're not, right? I've said for ages, Rudyard Kipling, and I've mentioned this before, people have said, well, they were born here. Well, Rudyard Kipling was born in India. Is he an Indian? People have got to get clear about nature. Nature gazumps the desires of communists, and they hate that. They hate that. They hate wherever the will of God has expressed itself in the true natural diversity of people upon the earth. And everybody knows where their ancient and cultural homelands naturally are. And if you want to learn about them, I'd like to go there and learn about them. But you don't go in and say, oh, look, I'm here learning about you, but you've got to do everything my way whilst I'm here. I want fish and chip shops putting up and I need a pub and everything. No, it's our home. So why is it allowed the other way? Well, it's not allowed. It's been enabled. It's been brought together. And it's not these migrants' direct fault, but the result, as we can see, as it's building up with all these escalating reports, is not good. And I'm going back to this little thing here that Aristotle writes. A multi-ethnic society is thus necessarily anti-democratic and chaotic, and tyrants rule over it. In other words, for a tyrant to arrive, for a tyrannical class to gain more power, this is one of the preconditions for bringing it about, to create discord between people where no discord would exist if everybody was effectively, or the great bulk of people, was staying at home. And go on holiday there. That's fine. Nobody hates one. But living is a very, it's a too all-encompassing a term. And we've got situations taking place now here in the UK, which are literally, all they are about is destroying us as a people. That's all they're about. And you've got the same thing going on over there. They've got the same in France and Germany. It's not about, we want to be open-minded and all this, that, and the other. We never had a problem before until someone said, this is a problem. No one says that Africa is racist because they don't allow white people to live in most of the countries. I think they shouldn't. It's their home. It's their home. If they say you can't go in, you can't go in. That's that. Who are you to stick your nose in? But of course, the commercial class, this internationalist thinking, sees everything like that as a barrier to them acquiring more stuff, more control, more influence. And so they're the ones that have laid it in. And I know one of their arguments has always been, but when you're nations, you see, you're always having wars with one another and killing one another. And of course, the historical track record shows that to be true. What it doesn't show you is that one of the great driving forces for bringing all these wars about between people is their antecedents. The ones that were running the banking systems and the commercial enterprises and the organizations and the Masons and God knows what else they've had. They're the ones that have been orchestrating this down through the line, almost as if to say, look, if we get them warring with it, we can always use it as a historical example. They cause you to war, so they say the solution is the United Nations. There you go. And yet since when did that come about? 1947 or something? And the world has had more war since that organization arrived than at any other point before. It's non-stop. Because a thing like the United Nations needs a causative reason to exist. So it's whether it does it consciously or not is irrelevant. they thrive on the presence of ever more wars because they go, we're the United Nations. We can sort it out. We can make it all peaceful. Didn't you cause all this? Says the bloke at the back of the room. Get that guy locked up. It's a major problem.
Well-armed army is not an army. It's they're peacekeepers.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul. And Paul.
Hey, Patrick. There's a voice out of the space. Hi, Patrick. Welcome to the show. What have you been doing this past hour? You must have been doing something quite important to not turn up here.
Driving home from work.
That's quite important. Yeah.
So cool. Yeah, I was listening to your conversation the first hour and the second hour. We're in the second hour, eh? So yeah,
we are. Yeah, we have about 35 minutes left to run, but you can speak away. Yeah, we were just. I was just going over the football thing again, but not really about the football.
End of
thing.
An empire.
Yeah, sort of.
Empire.
Yeah, maybe.
Because empires decline, don't they?
Well, we're told. Yeah, so we're told. Yeah, that they have a lifespan. Like that's what Spengler talked about in The Decline and Fall of the West, right? That they're like. He viewed it, is it anthropomorphic? What was his? It's like the birth of a child. So you start off brand new and everything's great, but you've got lots of challenges like just surviving to start off with. Then you get through that and you get a bit stronger. Then you get bigger, then you expand and then it starts to go to seed. And then in the end, stronger rivals build up on your borders and it collapses. I mean, that's what happened to Rome and all of them, you know. So what happened to the British Empire? Oh boy, you know. So, yeah.
It starts out as a nation and then ends as an empire, dies as an empire. As people become mixed and they end up, taking one person from one place and putting them in another foreign country as troops that can't speak the language, and that kind of like America is at the moment, where you go, you go from your homeland, from your nation, American nation, and you go to places far flung like Afghanistan, and you fight in wars that you had no business beginning or ending, and can't speak the language of the countries you're fighting in, and it's chaos, and then it's the decline, kind of like World War I started at the end of the Holy Roman Empire with Franz Ferdinand, and how that all kicked off.
Yeah, there's like a power vacuum and something arises and moves into it and takes it into another phase. All the time, of course, we're told that this is progress, but it's nothing of the sort. I mean, maybe, I hate saying things like this, but maybe it's just an unavoidable aspect of the human condition. I mean, human nature does not change. I mean, Egypt fell because they brought in Nubian pharaohs. That was the end of it. There's a disconnect. And people say, oh, no, we can all get on. Yeah, we can. But if you put it like this, you're going to be getting on in a process where everything will decline because nature don't want it. And we are subject to these great forces of nature, which most of us, I guess, for most of our life are not necessarily sensitive to or see, particularly if you've been brought up in a peaceful and happy sort of world, which for the bulk of my life I have. For me personally, of course, there have been people from my country have died and killed people and all sorts of other things, and it's happened around us. But I've been fortunate, I suppose, up to this point. Most of us have. But you see that's kind of a patterning effect that keeps happening again and again. I hate sort of the result. Oh, no, it's bound to be like this. I mean, the Chinese say that. They just say, look, in terms of the affairs of the earth, war is inevitable. It will come again and again and again, and it will never stop coming. And you're going, oh, is that it? Is that the best idea you've got? I'm not really into that. That's what Sun Tzu, a lot of that was about, that kind of stuff in his Art of War and all these sorts of things that, and maybe Spengler's observations, they hold a lot of truth in them, that as the youthful nation becomes more mature and stronger, it just has to keep or wants to keep on flexing its muscles. And it does. And in the early stages, it does it well or does it victoriously, and all that kind of culture builds up around it. And then it gets to a point where it's a bit tired, and then it gets beat up and it all falls down. It all kind of falls down. So it's difficult to say. I mean, I don't know whether it's a natural thing or whether this sort of fight within the earth, of which we are right at sort of, the middle or during World War III, whether it's like this because of so-called natural reasons, or we're supposed to buy into the idea that our nature is such that we can never avoid this, or whether there really is a force that is responsible for so much of the mayhem that we're kind of having to react to that all the time. I don't see any reason why a civilization should fall apart, but it seems to me that race mixing is always present when it does. It's never absent. It's always there. The Byzantine Empire fell for the same reasons and was overwhelmed for it. That's the longest lasting one we know. And that's pretty long. No one talks about that much, but it's over 1,000 years, longer than anything out of Egypt. Or anyway, it's about 1,300 years, that thing. It's just incredible. But are we taught that at school? Now, let me tell you about the Eastern Christian Byzantine Empire. Do you know about that? No. Well, it's quite an amazing story. I don't know enough about it either, Patrick. But there we go. And we're in our own.
Well, I know that it was Christian.
Yes.
And that has a long ways to go with civilizing nations. And
it does.
It's also a reason, like, for instance, Greece is ancient Greece is considered the home of philosophy and modern knowledge and science and everything that sprung from it. Like, so even just the way it ended up becoming, a factor in Christianity. Most of the Gospels were written in Greek. Most of the Christ's apostles and disciples were Greek speakers. And I think they borrowed a lot of that language because it worked. It worked for being able to have a common doctrine amongst peoples. And you can't have that cohesion unless you have some sort of doctrine and principle and faith, understanding.
Yeah.
Somehow that happened in the Byzantine Empire, and then gradually it was disrupted by the powers that should not be. And
well, I know. I think we've mentioned here before. Ezra Pound, wrote a lot of. He wrote some kind of note about that, and they had these laws, which of course are the most unwoke laws you could possibly imagine. But this is why it lasted as long, and effectively, aliens, anybody outside of if you weren't a Byzantine, if you weren't of the race, if you weren't of the stock of people that built it, you were not allowed to occupy any position of power whatsoever in banking, the law, education, and something else that was very important, which I can't remember. Banking, the law, education, and government, of course. That's very important. Apparently. Yeah, that.
I thought you said it was important.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think I got it right first time, didn't I? And that government stuff. So they kept their consistency. I mean, it seems to me that people write their own myths and tales, and of course critics come along later and go, well, none of that's true, But at the time, it holds you together. What other means would there have been for people holding themselves together other than the tale around the campfire at the end of the day, which would build up, the storytellers, the traveling minstrels, all of these stories held in that way simply because books were unavailable and most people couldn't read for a huge chunk of history. It was just not available to them. But they kept their traditions and their sense of place going because of that.
What wasn't it that the Byzantine Empire, as that fell, didn't the Venetians and the banking in Venice begin to rise at that period of time?
Yes, they did.
The Venetians were blind.
Okay.
Have you been waiting the whole show to say that? I can't do this anymore. This is getting out of hand. Ridiculous.
Well, it's the reason I wonder that is because recently I've been studying these things called mounts of piety that were started back around the 1400s, which would have been around the time of the fall of the Byzantine Empire.
Yeah.
Which is when the bankers started, the money power started to rise out of the Venetian ghetto and take over. And to counteract that, a lot of these Catholic institutions started what were called mounts of piety for poor people who were under the burden of usurious loans to get out of it. And it would basically be a pool of people who are more wealthy and well off, upper middle class, and rich people who would give their money to these mounts of piety and not expect anything in return. And they would then be distributed as loans to the poor, as alms, and they would end up becoming more or less kind of like a pawnbroker in a way, where the poor would come in with whatever valuable thing they might have to give as collateral, but they could always redeem it if they pay off the loan. And it seemed like a good system. As I looked into it, there are actually still these institutions in places like Belgium and Italy that still exist to this day that I don't know if they're in the same condition that they were at one point, but they seem quite interesting. I was looking at one in Belgium that did sort of that pawnbroker type thing where they would auction off goods because the person pawning their good for the loan, they would have a certain amount of time to redeem it. And if they wanted to, they could just say, well, sell it off and collect the proceeds from it. And then I don't have to pay you back my loan. Or they could redeem it, up until about, a certain time, and then it would automatically go back to the Mount of Piety if they couldn't pay off the loan.
Right.
And then they would just break even, more or less. So on the loan, so it's something I want to look into more of, because it seems like a good idea and maybe something that could be applied now in other places like here or wherever anybody might need it. Because as empire, people are going to fall into poverty eventually, and it's going to take something like that to get us out of it.
Yeah.
People that can think like that.
Your sound's breaking up a bit, Patrick. I don't know what's. I don't know what's.
I thought that was me.
No, you're clean, but you're clean. But Patrick's a bit crackly. You've gone crackly on us. Are you talking about something really dangerous, Patrick? That's probably what it is. That's what we.
I'll reboot. I'll reboot and come back.
Oh no, you're okay now. There's something going on. You're clear up
okay.
now.
Okay.
Oh no, you're back being crackly.
Weird.
There's something. It's like on the thing, as if you want to clear your throat and spit, which I know I do. But yeah, something like that.
Usually, when that happens to me, it's sample rate or buffering in the voice.
Well, maybe I had my phone
mixer.
too close to the microphone.
Yeah. No, it didn't.
You sounded fine up until about half a minute ago, but yeah.
Okay, I don't know how to explain it.
No, it's clean now. Now it's clean again. So, I know. Let's just struggle on for a bit. We're okay. We've only got about the rest of our lives to go. No.
And we've got about 2 minutes and 39 seconds we can kill with the Blues Brothers anyways.
Oh, you've got that one rocked up, have you? That's great. Okay, well, we'll go to that in a second or two. No, that's really good. Yeah, I put a little note on tonight's show saying how much hot air could we actually produce tonight. I don't think we're doing too bad, are we? I've produced quite a bit, actually. So that's been quite good. As much hot air as we can get out there. It's because we've got a nice picture of a balloon. I don't know where it comes from. Some machine makes these things out there and we just pick them up and use them. So it's all pretty good and fun. Nice balloon though. Yes. Okay. Yeah, the Byzantines. How did we get onto that? That was a bit bizarre, wasn't it? But going back to Pound.
Fall of an empire.
Yeah, I was reminded.
Ezra Pound.
Yes, Ezra. Good old Ezra.
Do tell more, because I want to learn more about what would you call him? A protege, Eustace Mullins.
Yeah.
I don't know too much about him, but I heard.
Don't you? I thought you'd know a load about him.
I don't.
Actually.
No, actually, I don't.
All right.
Who was he?
Well, he was the man to write the very first conspiracy book about the Federal Reserve. That's who he was. He was that important. I mean, he didn't die. So we're talking about Eustace Mullins. So if you've not heard of him, everybody out there, go look him up. Fantastic researcher, writer. Wrote about every politically incorrect topic you could think of and wrote about it well, based on sound research, going to all the main libraries. And he was, Pound was this poet and also this great assistant to literary figures in the early 20th century, people like James Joyce. So, yeah, you've probably got Pound to blame for Ulysses and things like this, although it maybe makes more sense than the original script is and all these sorts of things. I mean, James Joyce is an acquired taste, and I haven't acquired it. Let's put it that way.
Finnegan's Wake is
all that stuff.
Almost unintelligible.
Yeah, it's just silly. So that's how I call it. Yeah, very good. No, you're not reading it right. I'm not going to either. I've got better things to do. Sorry, see you later.
You're not drinking enough.
Yeah. Oh, you're drinking too much. So, but he was also, apparently he was a massive influence on Hemingway because he was his editor. Mullins talks about this. He said Hemingway, when he started off, that's good old Ernest, I'm going to kill a bull today, or whatever he was going to do. He was that very spare style that Hemingway developed. And I've quite enjoyed the few things by Hemingway that I've read. He assisted him with that, so he was a great guide. And I don't know if he also helped T.S. Eliot, but I could be wrong about that. Anyway, I'm not sort of big into all of, I just know a bit about it, but probably not enough to sort of have a proper conversation about it.
Yeah, Ezra Pound, he helped T.S. Eliot. Yes.
He did. And Pound was just an inquirer after truth. He spent a lot of time over here in England in the early 1900s, and he learned about banking then, and he's written, I can't repeat them on air, but if you find the quote, I could, but I want the show to run next week. But if you, everything he wrote is pretty accurate and spot on. He was therefore, a figure to be watched and targeted by the powers of the day. They didn't like him. He was highly critical of usury. I've actually played one of his poems here called Usura, which is from the Cantos, his epic poem. It's actually a recording of Pound reading it out himself, and it's read in a very dramatic style. And he's basically saying that with usura, which I'm assuming is maybe the Latin way of saying it or something, he talks about no man can build a house that will stand. Everything falls apart with it. It's excellent. When you understand it, when you understand, what usury is and what it does, Pound's poem, Usura, is really worth reading every now and again. And he delivers it in a very sort of theatrical and direct and energized way, very strong. There's sort of like an anger behind it. So he then became a target of, he was against World War II, you see, was Pound, and Mullins was his assistant. Whether he was assistant before the war or after, I don't know. He must have, I don't know, it must be just after, because he went to Italy, did Pound, spent a lot of time in Italy, and he wrote a whole series of broadcasts and broadcast them from Radio Rome, I think it was, effectively attacking the Allies all the way for effectively fighting the war on behalf of the bankers, right? So, because he knew, he wasn't alone in this, he knew this stuff. And you can get those speeches online somewhere, probably archive.org have got them. So there's a transcript of all of them, and they're written in the way he spoke, which is quite unique. It's kind of a sort of staccato, laconic sort of way of talking, and he jumps ahead in a way. It's very intelligent stuff. It's not ununderstandable. You will be able to understand it, but it's definitely a sort of unique prose style. And he would do these 20-minute, 30-minute broadcasts. I don't think there are any recorded, Patrick, although you might be able to find them. I know how keen you are on this stuff, and it would be great to hear them. I'd like to hear some of them. There might be clips of them somewhere, but the bulk. Anyway, he just attacked the US administration, and he attacked the British Empire, and he attacked all of this, the so-called allies, for effectively fighting a war on behalf of the bankers, which is completely true. That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what was taking place. And they didn't like him. So when he came back, they seized him at the end of the war, arrested him, took him to New York and stuck him in a mental institution. And whilst he was in that mental institution, I've forgotten the name of it, it was somewhere in New York. This is a guy who's almost like a Nobel Prize-winning literary man and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's horrific. But they stuck him in a single cell for 10 years or somewhere. A long time, but he was allowed visitors, and Mullins was a visitor. And whilst Pound was impounded, as it were, he basically sent Mullins off to do work for him. He must have had some resources, or to somebody, an agent or a trustee was paying him from his estate. And he sent him off to libraries, and he gave him all these instructions. He said, I want you to go and get this document and this, and I want you to read this book and do this. And we've got to find out. And so from all that work, Mullins put together The Secrets of the Federal Reserve, which came out, I think, about 1948 or 49, and is the first full-on sort of critical, fully accurately researched from their own records attack on the Federal Reserve, showing that it's a private company owned by private spivs, that it's deceived the whole of the states, that it has now taken control of the economy, which it did, and that, the old phrase, you're now all effectively the slaves of the bankers. And Mullins pioneered all of that. Really, I think in that particular, you call him the granddaddy of modern research. I'm not calling him a conspiracy theorist, because he's not. It just actually, whenever people do accurate research like that, they will 9 times out of 10 come across the same pattern of conspiracy. That is, people plotting things without the public knowing. This happens all the time. In fact, the whole world tends to run on it, unfortunately.
I remember when William Cooper started his Hour of the Time broadcasts in '92, that he had gone over to Wimbledon to do a speech, and Eustace Mullins was part of that whole crew that went over there with Cooper. So it was kind of they're promoting each other in a way. And I guess I haven't really looked too deep into his work. I'll have to.
Well, there's video footage of him as well. He was lucid right up to the very end. He really was. I don't know how old he was when he passed. I think maybe early 90s. He was working right through to his late 80s. And crystal clear. I mean, there's a comment in here from Ether. Eustace Mullins required research, lots of it on BitChute, on the Earth newspaper channel. So I'm just giving a shout out there. There's some speeches he gave, 2005, 6, and 7. And he's got this kind of slightly high falsetto voice, but he's very lucid and clear. And he's charming. He's just a good man. You can just tell he's just a really good man, and he did this fantastic work. He identified vaccines as being, what they were back in the late 60s, I think. He did lots of research into the Bible, because, I'm not saying I'm not up to his standards, but I think he went through a similar thing. He starts off in banking, which is what I did, and he ends up going to the Bible, because you would be drawn there. You would go back to look at, when did this all begin? This covert abuse of things, and you find obviously a lot of it in the Bible if you read it right.
I think that Ezra Pound was a Catholic, because I know that he worked with Father Leonard Feeney for the Jesuit magazine America magazine in the 20s and the 1930s.
Okay,
before the war,
right?
And Feeney was on parallel, he's parallel lines with what Ezra Pound was doing and what Father Charles Coughlin was doing before the war actually began.
Yeah.
And that's quite an interesting story there too, with Father Coughlin.
Yeah.
And how he was against the war, America entering the war, saw the Bolsheviks making an alliance with the Roosevelt administration to enter into the war, and then he was quickly censored and shut up. And then it wasn't too long after Father Coughlin stopped broadcasting, because he was one of the most well-known popular radio personalities in the 30s.
When you say well-known, his audiences, I mean, that was the heyday of radio. His audiences were enormous, weren't they? They were colossal, huge. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, wasn't it? Millions of listeners.
Millions. Yeah. It was millions. And he was out of Michigan.
Yeah.
And after that, see what happened was he started attacking Hollywood moguls like Jack Warner from Warner Brothers. And because they were coming out with this pro-war propaganda to get us into war with Germany. And he didn't like that. And shortly after he started going after Warner Brothers, they shut him down. Warner helped run NBC. And shortly after that, NBC came up with this thing called the Catholic Hour, which featured this young Monsignor named Fulton Sheen out of I forget what the name of it. It's Catholic University in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And it was all, suddenly it switched from being against the war to God has a purpose for us, and we must go to war and defend against the evil tyranny and all of the things that typically go with starting a war, where they use religion as a means of doing it. Like Peter Hitchens talks about this in one of his books about how they use the Christian churches to get people amped up into fighting a war and they have to do it because they have to come up with a just cause for going to war, because otherwise nobody's going to want to go and risk death for something that they don't believe in. And they have a real way of perverting it. And I think that's what happened in Fulton Sheen, for one of the broadcasts. It was called the Catholic Hour broadcasts, put on by the Council of Catholic Men, National Council of Catholic Men. A few of the broadcasts, maybe just one, he chose Father Feeney, who worked with Ezra Pound. And he was like Coughlin, but I think later on he exposed a lot of what was going on, especially with the United Nations. And I noticed, listening to the old Winston Churchill broadcasts and speeches, that I don't think he
who's that? Who you say? Who?
Your prime
I'm
minister.
teasing you. Oh, him.
Yeah,
that bloke. Yeah, got you.
He would refer to, instead of calling them the Allies, he would call them the United Nations, and the terminology for the United Nations was what they referred to themselves as. Nowadays they call them the Allies in World War II. Well, they called themselves the United Nations, and that institution is what we have to this day. But what Feeney saw was this gradual encroachment of the United Nations, creating these things like the World Health Organization and the International Labor Organization, and their roles were reversed, so that, in fact, the World Health Organization was more like the International Labor Organization, and the Labor Organization was more like a health organization. It's just kind of, weird trickery to confuse the public of what the actual agenda is, and things of that nature. Just like what happened with COVID-19, they use health as an excuse to bring down businesses and put us into poverty, so that, hey, we're going to start a new war and you're in poverty, so we'll forgive your debt. Just join the military and you're going to be okay. We'll take care of you. You just go over there and you aim your gun at those nasty Russians or whoever it is we tell you to, and you'll be just fine. God's looking.
You'll be great. You might come back without no arms and legs, but it'll be worth it for us. Not for you, but for us, it'll be worth it. Yeah. Yes, well, that's a typical. I mean, when you were talking there, thinking about, obviously they have this power on a large national scale. They can get through to everybody because of their command of the media. It made me think that the appropriate, or maybe a path, and I keep thinking about this more, is that local resistance is the only way, and it's not really resistance; it's a regeneration of local ties, because. If we are waiting, as it were, for the mass of all the people, say in England, to come over to a certain understanding that we think is more truthful and wholesome and decent and ethical, which is really what we're looking for, we're going to be waiting for a long time. In fact, it'll never happen because we can't get through to enough fast enough. But on a local basis, if you can create these pockets of independent thinking and slowly but surely build it up, maybe that's an approach. I mean, it's obviously a great challenge because I'm not aware too often of people doing it. And we seem to be hardwired to want the nation to come together and to work together as a nation properly, which we do, even though, what they're doing with mixing all the races up and saying you live in a multicultural space, and this is for all nations, stops us doing that. It reduces the propensity for people to do that. And also they're beginning to think, well, I shouldn't do that, because we're in a progressive state and it's all going to work out in the end. But of course, they're actually giving up everything. People I don't think they necessarily realize this, that it's not about actually being at odds with other people. It's actually being at peace with your own. And to a great degree, sort of mining the riches that are existent. For whatever reason, you get born into a particular race. I can't tell you why. I have no idea how it works out like that way. But it seems to me that that's valuable. I think there's got to be a value in that because it exists.
As
it's
an
here.
institution.
Yeah. There's a value
we
in
have
it.
that institution. We have these parishes already where you have at the parish level, you have people who can come together on a local basis in prayer in a common purpose, and you can actually do something about it. And that's why they're being attacked at the local level. That's what they did before when they were starting a war with the religious. They were going in and they were disrupting the parish life of these places, and they were becomes a recruiting thing almost.
Yeah.
Just like with COVID, what did they do? They shut down the churches. Why is that? Because they knew that that's where any resistance was going to come from. It's a very clever trick, and I think it's been used for centuries.
Yes.
And it's not anything new. This is nothing that hasn't happened before. We might think it is because we're of our generation and our time.
They have a playbook, Patrick.
New.
I'm convinced of this, that goes back millennia. They have a playbook. They know, they've kept the understanding of the psychology or the mood of crowds, how to manipulate them, and the mechanisms that you set up. They're not very clear to us. You wouldn't necessarily be looking for them. But to them, who have been involved in the business of effectively controlling us like cows in a field, those things are very well known. And of course, the thing that they attack is the truth, and they warp it, and they do all that. They create confusion to get, like you were saying earlier, they've got to get people whipped up in a particular thing, and they control the language. And it reminded me of something. I don't know if you've seen this. We're getting towards the end, so I'll just mention this during these last few minutes. It's a little thing I get. I'm on certain email lists, and somebody sent me through a picture of some bloke, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, right? And it says this: is in a statement issued on the occasion of the International Day for Countering Hate Speech.
Oh God.
Yes, I don't know if you knew that there was an International Day for Countering Hate Speech. UN Secretary General, this is recent, this last few days, Antonio Guterres called for the global eradication of so-called hate speech, which he described as inherently toxic and entirely intolerable. The issue of censoring hate speech, it goes on, stirs significant controversy primarily due to the nebulous and subjective nature of the definition. At the heart of the debate is a profound concern. Whoever defines what constitutes hate speech essentially holds the power to determine the limits of free expression. Now, am I mistaken in thinking that the Bolsheviks were sort of doing something like this about 100 years ago? I'm pretty sure they were, If you shut words down, who defines what is hateful? And what's wrong with hate? If I say, going back to football, if I say, I like Manchester United, somebody from Manchester City could say, that's hate speech. You've upset me because I like Manchester City. You need to go to prison for saying that in my presence. We are at the level of derangement, but these things will come because they almost seem to be upon us. They're here right now. This sort of, Orwell, of course, wrote about this in his book about the whole thing of the control of speech. Hate, as I understand it, my dictionary defines the word hate as a strong aversion to or dislike of. That's it, a strong aversion to or dislike of. Therefore, throughout your life, you're going to have moments. Sometimes you get stuck on a certain thing where you hate something. You have a strong aversion or dislike of it. You don't want to be around it. So who's to basically, of course, we all know this. What he's saying is the speech that you say that attacks us, that's hate speech. And the speech that we say that attacks you, that's good because we're in power. These people are bizarre. They really are. Mm-hmm. They're bizarre. Antonio Guterres, doesn't gut mean fat man or something? He's got a fat head. And of course they think that we actually respect them or think that they're intelligent. These are a goofy bunch of inbreds. And but we have to find a way of actually getting them to shut up, because I think what he's just said is hate speech. So I think he needs to be imprisoned under his own guidance. Do you know what I mean? That's what we need to do. Something like that. Hey, we're running towards the end of the show. We are, you know. Oh, you sent me another version of a song, so I better play it and wind out with that, hadn't I? So listen, we won't go out with the usual music tonight. What time are we at? We haven't even got enough time for this on WBN. I'm terribly sorry, but this will run on into Rumble. But this is, I'll play the Blues Brothers, then we'll have a few words and we'll wrap up. So you've been listening to Paul English Live, that's me. Paul Bean Alive, that's you, Paul. And Patrick, who joined us halfway through. So we've been here. Next week, I have a guest. I think I have a guest next week. I think it's George Hobbs. The Fact Hunter is on next week. He was on a few months ago. We had a cracking show. We ended up talking a lot about music back then. Maybe we'll do that again. I don't know. But George is due to be back, and there's a few things happening with George and Radio Soapbox, so that's good. And that's kind of where we're at. I've really, you know what? I'm terrible at finishing the thing off. I need a timer, don't I? So let me... Yeah, hang on, just
20 seconds.
Oh,
20
just
seconds.
Is that right?
15.
So, yeah. We're finished. We're out of here. I'll do this, then we'll play the song afterwards. We'll be back again next week here on WBN. Have a cracking week in between now and then. We're giddily, breathlessly only a few weeks away from our election. Bye for now, everyone. And here we are, still in the after show. There we go. I just thought there'd be a little changeover. I've got the after show can't go on too long, unfortunately, tonight. I wish it could, but it can't for me. I've got certain little issues to deal with here, which I need to. So what we're going to do is I want to thank everybody in the chat tonight for your fab contributions. And we'll be back again, as I said, next week. I'm pretty sure George Hobbs is my guest next week. Sometimes I get muddled with the dates. In fact, I'm getting muddled with everything these days. But Paul and Patrick, any sort of closing comments for today that you would like to make to just wrap up here?
Look, I have a question about George. When's he going to be on? What days?
June the 27th, which is a week today, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, June the 27th. And the following Thursday is the general election all-night special. I mean, I might not be able to make the show because I'll be down at the polling booths, voting all night long. I won't. That's a completely insane thing I've just said. I won't be doing anything like that. So I'll have no excuses to not be here. As I said, if you want to pitch in and vocally contribute to the general election night special, gird your lions, and please do so. The invite will be there to anybody to turn up and provide a completely pointless and vacuous understanding of this political process, which is meaningless, stupid, and irrelevant, but has captured the whole attention of all the goofballs in the nation. Let's see how Nigel Farage shapes up and what he actually does. That would be fun. And that's it. Paul, anything that you would like to say in these closing moments of the whole thing?
Keep your friends close, your enemies closer, your Bible handy, and your powder dry.
That was pretty good. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up with that song. Okay, we played Rawhide by Frankie Lane. Now we're gonna play Rawhide by the Blues Brothers. So stick this in your pipe and smoke it. Take it into your week. We'll have more things to announce here. I've been talking to Eric recently about doing certain more things with Eric Von Essex. We did a cracking show the other week. A lot of fun. Great time with Eric. And I want to tell you more about
I want to hear his show too.
Yeah. So he goes out on a Monday. We don't have his show on Soapbox yet, but we're trying to get it on there. So we will do, hopefully, very soon. His show goes out on a Monday evening, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. on YouTube. So go and do a search on Fockham Hall. Yeah, that. Go and do a search on that, and I'm sure you'll find the link through to his YouTube channel. We'll get these sort of links and connective glue in place in due course. But yeah, I'll be doing something with Eric as well, I think, on a week on Sunday. So I'll let you know next Thursday about that, but we're going to do something on the Sunday before the election because, we just can't get enough of hanging around with all these wonderful politicians. Okay, so there we go. All right. Blues Brothers, Rawhide. We'll be back next week. Bye for now, everyone. Bye now.
Rollin', 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 though the streams are swollen, keep them doggies rollin' rawhide. Rain and wind and weather, hell-bent for leather, wishing my gal was by my side. All the things I'm missing, good bills, love and kissing, are waiting at the end of my ride. Move 'em on, hit 'em up, hit 'em up, move 'em on, move 'em on, hit 'em up, rawhide, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, ride 'em in, cut 'em out, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, rawhide. Moving, moving, though they're disapproving, keep them doggies moving rawhide. Don't try to understand them, just rope, throw, and brand them. Soon we'll be living high and wide. My heart's calculating, my true love will be waiting at the end of my ride. Move 'em on, hit 'em up, hit 'em up, move 'em on, move 'em on, hit 'em up, rawhide, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, ride 'em in, cut 'em out, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, rawhide. Move 'em on, hit 'em up, hit 'em up, move 'em on, move 'em on, hit 'em up, rawhide, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, ride 'em in, cut 'em out, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, rawhide. Rollin', 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 yeah, rollin', 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 rollin',
See you all next week, everyone. Bye for now.